Okay, guys, this time we're going to talk about negative core beliefs. And as a reminder, I'm going to just use some resources from the internet, my years of practice, and really my best practices and tools that we were introduced to when I was going through school to become a therapist. I have no clue other than these like education moments as to why I've kept all this information, but it has come in handy over the years. So one of the things about core beliefs is it's directly attached to your self-esteem, and your self-esteem is really important to how you just kind of live out your life. Your self esteem just affects how you process information. If you already have like a negative view of yourself and something negative happens, then you just kind of create this confirmation bias, and it's like, oh, okay, I kind of knew this stuff was going to happen to me. This is what my life is going to be anyway. It's going to be sucky, it's going to be miserable. Low self esteem goes hand in hand with a lot of mental health disorders, most especially depression and anxiety. Low self esteem can be really scary because if you're depressed enough, low self esteem can be that thing that pushes you over the edge to attempt suicide or actually succeed at suicide. So it's very, very important to clean up those core beliefs because most of those core beliefs are based on negative thinking process you've already had, things that you've interpreted as negative situations because of the negative thought process. So it's a cycle. You behave according to that because remember, we talked about the cognitive triangle. You have an event, you have a thought, and then you have a behavior. And so sometimes you can have a thought which comes from your core negative core belief, how you feel about yourself. You behave a certain way and then you act a certain way. All right. So we're going to tackle this low self esteem. And it's basically changing the negative core beliefs you have about yourself. In earlier videos, we discussed core beliefs and negative thinking, how to tackle the negative, unhelpful thoughts you may have in certain situations. I want to help you in this video learn how to get to the root of the problem. And because these negative thoughts sprout from your negative core beliefs. We'll also learn how to change the unhelpful rules and assumptions that have kept your negative core beliefs intact. So the tools I discuss will also help you with dismantling your negative core beliefs by focusing on adjusting those negative core beliefs from negative and biased to balanced and realistic. And so, if I can just tell you anything in any of these videos that I have created, I never implement a tool or suggest a tool that'll just take you all the way right. So, if left is negative thinking, nothing will take you to all the way right where you're just kind of having positive thoughts all the time. That would be strange. It would be just as strange to have positive thoughts all the time as it would to have negative thoughts all the time. So the goal in anything you do is balance. Create balance and you'll be fine. So I'm going to go back and repeat what I said earlier, but I'm going to just give you a little bit more of a technical definition. So if you're still not clear as to where your negative core beliefs are as yet, you need to just kind of pin them down and identify them before you can start changing them. And to pin them down, you have to remember that negative core beliefs reflect like a broad and generalized judgment you have made about yourself, based on some negative experiences you might have had during your earlier years. And I also want to make sure you understand that it's not just your earlier years. Sometimes it's throughout your life. So I don't want you to think it's just when you were a child. It's throughout your life. So we want to start reflecting on the work that we've already done from the previous videos, especially the cognitive restructuring, because it may have helped you narrow down some of those automatic negative thoughts you have. So, to uncover negative core beliefs, you'll need to think about the specific clues and information you already have. So, one of the things you may have is, what do I say to myself when I'm most upset? What's a running thing that just kind of rolls through my head when I'm upset? And so that may be a clue. When I'm upset, when I'm disappointed, when I haven't done something that I've expected to accomplish in the time that I've expected to accomplish it, how do I feel? What do I say to myself? So one of the things is reviewing negative life experiences. What After a negative life experience, what was the overarching theme of your thoughts then? Like, so if you failed the ninth grade, what did you think about yourself? Did you feel like you were a loser? Did you feel like you were dumb? Did you feel helpless? Did you feel hopeless? Like, jot that stuff down so that you can begin to figure out how you feel about yourself. And so you have to ask yourself questions. So, did these experiences lead me to think there was something wrong with me in some way? Another question would be, do I remember specific situations that accompany the negative thoughts or feelings I have had about myself? What do my memories of these situations say about me as a person? And if you guys notice, some of these questions and the process is quite similar to the cognitive restructuring in a previous video. The final question is, can I link a specific person I know to the way I feel about myself? Has that person used certain words to describe me? What does their treatment of me say about me as a person? The last question is like more specifically targeted at those core memories. One of the things I love that I've seen here lately on the internet is I think it's like TikTok or whatever. You see the videos where like a core memory has been unlocked. Although like people use it in a very joking tone, it's really a very true kind of thing. Like those positive, especially those positive core memories, like when you look back at them on your life and you have a good feeling or you have like good thoughts around it, then it creates this really comfortable space with the people who kind of created that memory with you. So I can just remember, like, I grew up in I don't know, I can't think of a word right now. So for lack of a better word, I'm going to use my home wasn't as harmonious as sometimes you see on television. So my mom was a yeller. She was a hitter. There was a lot going on. Like we were always anxious or kind of nervous or not really sure of ourselves. And then if we did feel a certain way, that would be dismissed or it would be belittled. And, I'm not mentioning those things as, I'm mentioning them so you can understand that those are the things that kind of create negative core beliefs. So I grew up not really being sure of myself, being super anxious because of the abuse. I had PTSD. So all these things came. And so like two core beliefs that I knew I grew up with was worthless. And that was because in my head, if my mom didn't love me, then I didn't amount to anything. I wasn't good. And I grew up with the core belief of unlovable. Like if my mom didn't love me, then who would? And I'm saying those because those were two big examples of how I showed up to the world. And those two examples just really affected my self-esteem. So if you think about what I said, like worthless and unlovable, like how could you expect to feel about yourself if those are the two overarching things in your life? Like that was big. So one of the reasons why I wanted to go in therapy, because I definitely wanted to help people like me. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I did know that, okay, I'm going to help people. I didn't know that I was going to go on a journey of just kind of really bettering myself and feeling good about who I am as a person. So my desire to help other people ultimately really helped me become a better person. But this video is not about me. So the next thing we're going to talk about is bias expectations. So bias expectations that you've identified, that you can identify in your life, could provide ideas as to what your negative core beliefs are. So reflect on key concerns you've identified in your thought diaries. These are the thought diaries you take from cognitive reconstruction. You can also use these for kind of core beliefs for like past things, and we'll get to that on how you just kind of adjust it and tweak it and use it for this purpose. So you ask yourself the following questions: if my bias expectations were to come true, what would that mean for me as a person? So if my bias expectation that people will leave me, what does that mean as a person? For me as a person, well, one of the things is you'll have what's called a bias confirmation. Like when people do leave you, it's like, see, it's confirmed. People will leave. They will always leave. Then you'll start to do this kind of innate thing where you just push people away because in your head, ultimately, they are going to leave. So what's the purpose of them being here anyway? And so the next question would be, if I didn't avoid or escape or use my safety behaviors, what would I be worried about revealing to the other people about who I am? Well, using the example of my childhood, if I stopped using avoid when I felt this way when I was younger, if I stopped using those, the most fearful thing I could tell people at that time in my life is that my mother didn't love me and she treated me horribly. And I feel like everybody is going to, no one's going to love me and everybody's going to treat me horribly. Like, you never want to tell a person that, especially a young Black girl from Chicago. I'm not going to, give you information on how to best me. That was my thinking back then. So one of the other things to think about is negative self-evaluations. These will also provide clues regarding your negative core beliefs. Think about the sort of criticism you've made for yourself in your thought diaries for negative self-evaluations. And you will ask yourself the following questions. What do my negative self-evaluations say about me? Now, to me, like these become more obvious when you compare what you've done and said to yourself versus what your friend has done and you've said to them. So one of the examples I like to use with clients is, if your best friend did that, would you call her stupid? Would you call her dumb? Would you call her lazy? Would you say you'll never amount to anything? No one will love you. If that's your best friend and you truly love them, you would never say anything like that to them. So why would you say it to yourself? Like, I always add that kind of example to the question, to that first question about negative self-evaluation. So to hop back on topic, what are the common themes, labels, words, or names I use to describe myself? What do they mean to me? Like if I call myself lazy, what does that mean about me? It means more that I'm lazy. That means I don't get anything done. That means no one can count on me. I'm unreliable. I'm not responsible. It means so many other things. So when you call yourself one word, that's not the only thing that you're calling yourself. There's a whole umbrella of things that come with that one word. And you have to be very, very careful saying those things out loud. Because again, it goes back to that example of, would you say that to your friend? So, do my negative self-evaluations remind me of criticisms I have received from others when I was young? What do those criticisms tell me about myself? Like, I'll go back to lazy. That's one of the words I was called for most of my life. But really what it was, I wasn't lazy. I was just very, very stubborn. My mother had a bad habit of saying, of making you do something over and over again when it wasn't to her liking. Well, I got to the point where I wouldn't do it at all because it's like, you don't like the way I do it, I'm not going to continue to do it. And because of that, my sisters would do it. And so they would call me lazy. Well, over time, that became hurtful. And what those criticisms told me about myself is a few of those things that I named earlier. And so I had to go about proving that I wasn't lazy. So I did more than I needed to do in certain situations to prove that I wasn't lazy. And we'll talk about that overcompensation later because that's really important. So, what things make what the other question is, the last question, excuse me, in the series is what things make me critical of myself? What do these things say about who I am? And so, these words in certain situations can make you critical about yourself. And what do they say about you? Well, the easiest thing to remember, like whatever the core belief is, that's what it says about you and whatever assumption you attach to that. And I know that sounds weird, but again, if I'm lazy, then people can't count on me. I lack motivation, focus, all these things. That is what it says about who you are as a person. The reminder is the word comes with a whole umbrella of meaning. And so, one of the things you want to do when you think this way is um, figure out a way to balance your self evaluations. So, you don't want to, again, go all the way to the right to I'm this, from the left, like I'm this negative, defective being, to I'm perfect, I'm lovely, I am just the best thing since sliced bread. Like, you don't want to do that. So, one of the questions out of three that you can ask yourself is what made it difficult to think about myself kindly or treat myself kindly? It goes back to that example of would you say this to your best friend? I am really, really big on I'm not going to be unkind to myself. I'm not going to allow others to be unkind to me. I'm really good about creating those boundaries. And I want you guys to see the same thing. Like, why is it difficult for you to treat yourself kindly? Why is it difficult to think of yourself in a kind way? What was I telling myself when I tried to do these things? And what do my reactions to thinking and treating myself well tell me about how I see myself? I can tell you from experience when you when you turn the corner and you begin to treat yourself well, initially it'll feel foreign, but eventually it'll feel better. It'll feel better. It'll feel more deserving. It will you will just kind of make the mental adjustment. I spent a lot of time on this because it's very, very important to understand that your negative core beliefs, the way they set up the way you see yourself. Now, as human beings, we're just kind of set up with both positive and negative. But if you have any struggles with PTSD, anxiety, depression, or any other mood disorder or mental health disorder, that's going to be skewed. And sometimes you don't have to have mental health disorders. So I want to make the disclaimer um, that you won't always have an issue with mental health. Okay, so before we move further along, I want to just make sure that you understand to this point that even if a core belief is, well, before I get to that part, I'm sorry, like the starting and stopping, but I want, because this part is just so important, I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. I just, for the general point of view, a core belief is a person's most central idea about themselves, others, and the world. So these beliefs act as like a lens that you look through, and every situation in life experience is colored by that lens. Because of this, people with different core beliefs might be in the same situation but think, feel, and behave very differently. So remember that even if a core belief is inaccurate, it will still shape how a person sees the world. Harmful core beliefs leads to negative thoughts, feelings, behaviors, whereas rational core beliefs lead to balanced reactions. Now I read that from a tool that I have, Therapist Aid, because it gives a more concise definition of what core beliefs are. So it gives you an example of two situations. Situation A, the core belief is I am a failure. So the reaction is the thought, of course I fail, why bother? The feeling, depressed, and then the behavior is you just don't make changes. Like if you think about those times where you're feeling really down, really defeated, really depressed, you don't have any motivation to do anything. One, because that core belief of I'm a failure may be there. Especially if if you find situations in your life to confirm that bias. Like when you fail at something, of course I'm a failure. Why wouldn't I fail? It'll eventually lead you to just not try. Hence doing nothing, making no changes. And so, more balanced core belief is I'm perfectly capable when I give my best effort. I did poorly because I didn't prepare. That's the thought. I feel disappointed, and my behavior is I plan to study before the next test. I can't tell you the number of times I've had a client in session, like one recently specifically, she kept saying for months, I'm horrible at math. I'm horrible at math. And so we talked about math, and I was like, well, do you really feel like you've given your best effort? Are you on social media when you're studying math? Are you paying attention in class? Are you just zoning out because it's like, I'm bad at math anyway, so why even try? So eventually she was like, you may have a point, because initially she was like, no, I pay attention, I do this. But then eventually she said, you may have a point. She started paying attention. She started putting a little bit more effort and studying, and she eventually got a B. But the core belief about math, like being dumb in math and not being smart, was so strong. Even though she made a B, she kept saying, well, I'm bad at math. And I was like, you're not bad at math. Stop saying that, because you're continually to confirm a bias that you have in your head about yourself. So I'm going to give you some common harmful core beliefs. So again, core beliefs are hidden beneath the surface. They're surface level beliefs. So some examples: I am weak. I am a loser. I am trapped. I am unlovable. I will end up alone. No one likes me. I am bad. I don't deserve to live. I am worthless. The world is dangerous. People can't be trusted. Nothing ever goes right. And so the consequences of those harmful beliefs, because remember, this is how you show up in the world, is difficulty trusting others. That means you won't be able to create really good relationships because you just kind of want to be away from everybody and everything. Feeling of inadequacies in relationships. Feelings of inadequacy in relationships. I'm saying that twice because that's really important. Some people don't understand why they feel like a person, like this person, why does this person like me? I don't feel like I deserve him. Like, what's going on? And that's because of that feeling of inadequacy, which is probably stemming from a core belief of I'm unlovable. So excessive jealousy, overly confrontational or aggressive, putting others' needs above one's own, mental health problems, maybe depression, anxiety, substance abuse, difficulty handling stress, and low self-esteem. Like these things are really important. Like if you think about, because that's how you show up in the world, if you think about how this affects you, what you think about yourself, how it affects you and how you behave because of it, you may set off an alarm like, oh crap, it's a negative core belief. Like that's where that's coming from. And for some people, it's a negative core belief that it's a seed that was planted when you were younger. And so you have to be very, very careful to not take ownership of what someone may think you could be. I've always been the kind of, well, first of all, let me walk that back. Not if I've always, since my adulthood, I've been the kind of person that'd be like, really? That's your opinion. And I don't mean that to be a jerk or rude or anything like that, but it is. It's their opinion. It has nothing to do with me, and I'm not going to take ownership of it, because if I do, then I'm constantly shifting who I am as a person to please these other people, and I'm never really just kind of figuring out what works for me. So be very, very careful when someone gives you their opinion of you. It's what it is. Like, if you agree to that opinion, then because you've come to that conclusion yourself, then by all means accept that compliment or opinion and just keep it moving. But understand that you can agree to disagree, especially about who you are as a person. So, so if you've identified a core belief or a number of core beliefs, choose one, and we'll just kind of use it as part of the exercise. So you especially want to choose one that's of your greatest concerns, because this can be one that you can just kind of create a more balanced perspective and just kind of help your self-esteem. Okay, so there should be a worksheet on the screen. And what you want to do is write that negative core belief um, on the top box of Adjusting Core Beliefs worksheet. So when you write the core belief down, you want to note how much you believe the negative core belief, when it's most convincing and when it's least convincing. Now, how the negative core belief makes you feel. And so throughout the exercise, you will need to just kind of keep referring to this worksheet to complete the rest of the exercise. This will ensure that you work through your negative core beliefs and tackle it if you have a clear record of this process to refer to at any time in the future. So that means you can use this worksheet to go back and just kind of work through whatever emotions come up, and you can have in black and white how you've just kind of decided this is what we're going to feel, and how we're going to move forward with this core belief. Because again, those negative thoughts are really just kind of their opinions. They're colored through this already negative perspective. And so it'll also help you to develop a balanced core belief. Now it's time to just kind of work through that. So think of something that's a more accurate reflection of you. So if when you're chilled out and you're not feeling depressed, you're not feeling anxious, and you're just kind of in a chill mood, hanging out with family or hanging out with friends, think about how you treat them. Think about how you feel about them and how you show up. So you at your best self, when you help clean up the kitchen or take out the trash because your mother's tired, or you help your dad do something because you heard him say his back was hurting. You help your friends, you buy something for them because when they'll like it, or when you think about them, you want to make them happy. So think about you in those moments. That's a good person that shows up. That's a conscientious and kind person that shows up. So, but when you're in your negative headspace, you don't think about that person. You only think about those negative things, being unlovable, being worthless, being those things. Like if you think of yourself as worthless, well, think about your friends, the times that you've helped them. Think about your siblings, the times that you've helped them, that you've done things for them. Think about all the people who are affected by how you've helped them and how you've loved them. To me, that's not a worthless person. And so, again, it's about just kind of creating balance. One example that I saw on one of the worksheets, just kind of researching this, is it might be the opposite of an old belief. If I am incompetent, then start to say, I'm competent. I'm a competent person. I can do things. And then find examples of when you were competent. So that means I'm capable of doing things. I know how to complete things and get things accomplished. I'm smart. I'm capable. The important thing is that the new belief, again, is more balanced. You don't want to go to the perfect side of things. I'm super perfect. I am the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. People need to love me or adore me and bow down to me. Like, that is a skewed perspective also, and that's not healthy. So we don't want to think that way. So because again, too, like you want to make sure it's more realistic and balanced because when you feel really bad, if it's a lie and it's just out of reach, your brain is going to say, come on now, that's not correct. That's not right. You absolutely suck right now. So just make sure that you're balanced. So examining the evidence of old beliefs will help you just kind of chip away at how strong that core belief is. So are the current problems I'm having based on this belief? An example of problems is depression, anxiety, relationship problems. Am I condemning myself because I need help and I can't manage alone? So if we think about how we are just kind of how we're taught and we're trained, like with communication, sometimes people say mean and hurtful things. They don't mean to say them. But if we think about healthy communication, how many of us were taught to have healthy communications with other people? So you don't condemn yourself as a mean person because you don't know how to say it right. You go and you figure out, okay, how can I say this better? How can I convey my feelings without hurting another person, but still not making myself feel worse? And trying to make them feel better. So, am I condemning myself on bad mistakes that I've made? Like failing school, having trouble with the law. This goes back to the whole best friend model. Like, if my best friend made a mistake, would I say, ooh, that was super dumb. You probably shouldn't have done that. Stupid. Ugh. What were you thinking? You wouldn't do that. So, you don't want to do that with yourself because, contrary to what your brain says, you definitely matter. So, am I condemning myself based on specific weaknesses? Not being academically minded. This is a big one for school age children. Like, if people are achieving, like, getting A's and B's and I'm struggling with C's, well, if you're trying hard and you're getting C's, then you're doing a good job, period. So I may be academically smart, but if you set a computer in front of me, all I can do is the very basics. I don't know anything other than the basics. I don't think of myself as a dumb person. I just know that that's not my thing. That's not my deal. So some people who don't do well in school are super creative people. They're very talented people. They have a social skill. So we're all intelligent in our own way. We just need to find the thing that works for us. Or that, I don't want to say works for us, but basically highlights our talent. And am I condemning myself based on physical characteristics or my personality attributes? It's funny, I just had this conversation with my daughter. Like, I'm not a very social creature. However, so when I was younger, if I made a social mistake, I would feel horrible. I was thinking, you're so lame. This is why nobody likes you. You never have friends. People are going to reject you. I would have all these thoughts. But like now that I'm older, I'm really okay with like having some kind of social mistake. I laugh about it and I think, oh wow, that's definitely something I would do. It's funny and honestly, it's a part of my personality. I'm a very quirky individual and I embrace that. Um, do I base my view of myself on how I compare to other people? Social media has blown this up. I have had so many clients that are so concerned about how they compare to other people in the world. Social media is not the truth of how things work. There's always something, like if you think about an iceberg, and with an iceberg, I don't know if you know, but the very top of the iceberg, although it's big, is nothing compared to what's below the surface. It's huge. So always think of social media as that iceberg. What you're presenting is just a small portion of it. What you see is just a small portion of it. So you don't know how big or what's going on underneath. I've seen several internet couples who struggle with abuse outside of the camera, but on the camera they look very happy and they look like goals, but you will quickly find out they are not. So, do I use how other people treat me or have treated me as a basis of how I view myself, like abuse or neglect or mistreatment. This is very important because other people treat you poorly don't mean you don't deserve love or respect or attention or good things. You definitely deserve those things. So you have to be very, very, this is why boundaries are important. And you have to be very, very clear as to what you will or won't allow people to do. Um, get to a point in your life, and we'll just kind of, this will be on a later video where you are able to create boundaries and, have healthy relationship and create respectful boundaries. Have I lost something that is important to my self-worth, like a job loss or a relationship or breakup? Some people take breakups very, very hard. Like more times than not, if I have teenagers that have broken up with a boy and they're, these are kind of first relationships, these are really, really hard things to just kind of overcome. And, sometimes you hear adults like, it's not a big deal, it's just a boy, blah, blah, blah. But if my core belief is that I'm unlovable and I finally got into this relationship where someone loves me and they're paying all this attention to me and I feel special, I feel important, and then boom, that person is gone. That's devastating. That's devastating. So we have to be very, very careful. Grown-ups about just kind of whatever when thinking whatever when a kid has a breakup. So so to adjust your negative core belief, these are, I want to get more specific. I want to bullet the things that you need to do to make these adjustments. So develop a new understanding of the evidence on which you have based your old beliefs. Okay, so the example I use, like the young lady who was bad at math. Well, evaluate really what you've done. Like if you are not paying attention, you're not studying, and if you fail the class, it's not that you're dumb, it's just that you haven't put any effort in. So that you're there, so the evidence right there is showing you that you're just not dumb. You just haven't put any effort towards your goal. If your goal was to get better at math. So develop a new balanced core belief. Well, I'm capable of getting better grades in math if I study and I pay attention in class. That's the belief. We're gonna roll with that. So identify evidence from past and present that support this new belief. And so again, that goes back to what I said about like helping your family, helping your dad when he says his back hurt, or helping your mom, doing nice things for your friends, helping them. You always want to pay attention to those things that you do when you're just kind of not struggling or suffering, because when you're struggling and suffering, you're focused only on the negative. So those things, if you identify what you do well, what you do good, who you are as a whole person, you'll see that you'll have a more balanced view of yourself. Identify what evidence you need to look out for in the future to support this new belief. So if the new belief is that I am lovable, then I pay attention to all the people in my life that love me, the way that they love me. And I'm talking about healthy, good love, not the love where it's just kind of manipulating, there's drama, yelling. Just if you feel comfortable and at peace in a relationship, you and this person can communicate. You just kind of have a good view of one another. Pay attention to those kind of things in the future. So behave and experiment in ways that confirm your new core belief. So if your core belief is that you're a kind and worthy person, pay attention to those things that you do that are kind and worthy, and that'll help solidify that belief. So just don't forget. So a lot of things with mental health is just kind of changing the way you think about it, changing the way you behave in response to it. So I hope this helped. If you have any questions or anything about negative core beliefs, please have the staff at LilyPad give you my email address and you can ask me some questions. I want to make sure that I'm here to explain it a little bit further if I need to. Thank you for your time.